Oi, mate! I don't know why I chose to start this video that way, but I did. And I probably won't do that again. This is a video that I am making because one of my former patrons, which are people who support me on Patreon, he wanted me to make a video on this topic. His name is OnlineZHD. You can check out his channel if you want. And my cat's probably just going to be meowing through this whole video. So the topic that he wanted me to make a video about is my top 5 favorite games of all time. And I do want to mention that this is not a Patreon reward that you can currently get, so don't expect it. Okay, so my top 5 favorite games of all time. I am not putting these games in an order from worst to best, but I will mention which one of these games is my favorite game. But the other 4 are not going to be put into an order. So I will first mention the 4 games that are not my number 1 favorite, and then talk about my number 1 favorite. So the first game that I am going to talk about is Portal 2. Portal 2, just like every other game that I am going to mention, is, I think, a fantastic game, an absolutely superb game, and a game that is nearly perfect. And I absolutely love this game, of course, or else it wouldn't be one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. For me, it can be hard to choose between Portal 1 or Portal 2 when it comes to which one I like more, but I think ultimately I would choose Portal 2 over Portal 1 because I think the puzzles are a bit better because they have more gameplay elements in them, and also I think Portal 2 is funnier than Portal 1, mostly because they have more characters in it, and all of the characters are funny, or in some ways even creepy, which just works well as dark comedy in this game. And part of why the puzzles are so cool in the Portal games are the portals. Like, that is such a great idea, and I don't know exactly how they came up with it. Actually, I do somewhat know. They actually copied it from a different game that they bought the rights to. Valve did, or something like that. But whoever came up with the portal idea is a genius. And overall, Portal has really good puzzles with a really interesting portal mechanic, and it has a story that is not only hilarious, but it is also pretty interesting, and in some ways, kinda scary when you start to think about it. And yes, that is Portal 2, one of my favorite games of all time, and the best puzzle game that I have ever played. Okay, the second game that I am going to talk about is Minecraft. Nowadays, many people love to hate on Minecraft, and I think that's partially because it's the cool thing to do now, just because Minecraft got so popular, but I really think it's not justified at all because the game itself is very good. And I think one of the biggest problems that people have with Minecraft is the game's community. Now, for me, this has never really been a problem because I play the game either in the single player mode or with friends. I never play on big servers or anything. That part of Minecraft has never interested me that much at all. And I literally like Minecraft for just the vanilla game. I think that the survival mode is great, and the creative mode is also really fun for if you don't want to have to go mine for resources and just feel like building something or testing out the game's mechanics. And I think that because of the Minecraft community, the game is often seen as a game for children, which is really not the case. Anyone can enjoy this game, and it is actually a very complicated game, so for children to play it, that's great, but I don't see it as a children's game just because the graphics look like an old school video game or whatever. When Minecraft first got popular, it was being played by adults on YouTube, which is something that people often forget. Anyways, let's talk about the game itself and why I like it. When you start Minecraft, you are in a world that is unique to you, although similar to every other Minecraft world, and you start out with nothing. And I love the feeling in Minecraft of going from having nothing to building your massive fortune of whatever it is you want to do. Minecraft is so complicated with its game mechanics and how much you can do in the game, and for me, that makes it very fun to play, and not just play it once, but play it multiple times. And I think the main hook of Minecraft is being able to do whatever you want, and a big part of that is building. Building in Minecraft is, in my opinion, better than building in any other video game, just because of how much freedom you have with it. Basically, every block in the world can be destroyed and then placed again, and that gives you so many possibilities for how you want to live your virtual life. And then on top of this, you have to survive and mine for the resources that you want to build, and that is how I have easily lost many more hours in Minecraft than I have in any other video game. I usually play Minecraft in single player mode, but once in a while I do play it online with friends, and for the most part, it's even more fun when you play it with friends. And I would say that one of the only problems that I have with Minecraft now is that I've played it so much in the past that oftentimes I get bored when I play it now, just because I've done almost everything the game has to offer that interests me before multiple times. So Minecraft is a game that I probably won't really get into that much until years after making this video, once it has been longer since I have played the game. But yes, that is why Minecraft is one of my favorite games of all time. Hate me all you want for saying it, I don't care. I think it is genuinely a very good game. Okay, this next game, everyone and their mother knows it would be on my list, so let's just get it out of the way. Infamous. Some people might think that Infamous is my favorite game of all time just because of how many videos I make on the series, and that's not the case. It's just that I have a very large following of the Infamous fan base. Thus, when I want to make Infamous videos, I'm gonna make them and be able to get views on them. Also, I am very knowledgeable about the entire series just because I played it a lot, and I think that in general it is underrated. And the most underrated part of it is the first game in the series, which I think is easily also the best game in the series. Usually when people talk about what Infamous 1 does better than the rest of the series, they talk about the story. While I do think the game has a fantastic story, I do not think that the story is the main feature of the game that pulled me into it and made me love it. I think Infamous has excellent gameplay, and it is incredibly fun. You have a good variety of superpowers to use against a good variety of enemies, and on top of that, you're in a city where you can climb just about anything, and climbing is fun, and your powers tie into the climbing, and there are a ton of side missions you can do in the open world, and a lot of upgrades that you can get to your powers, and on top of all that, there is a very good mystery story. And that is why I love Infamous. Of course, I will talk about this more in my review, which I have made 1/4 of so far, and I'm currently making the rest of it. Okay, and now for the last game that I will talk about before revealing my favorite game of all time. And this next game is The Last of Us. For a few years, The Last of Us was my favorite game of all time, and that is because it has an excellent story that is told well through gameplay. And something that I will say right now is no Uncharted games are on this list of my top 5 games. And the reason why I think The Last of Us is better than the Uncharted series is simply because there is more in-depth gameplay and a story that for me was probably a little bit more emotional. The story is what most people talk about when they talk about how good this game is, so I'll mention that first. The story is actually really simple, and I think that's why it is good, because Naughty Dog doesn't try to add in a ton of different plots into the game that makes it confusing or anything, but the real story in the game is just this guy who lost his daughter years later after being a broken man finds another daughter-like girl to love in the same way, and that's really what the story is. And I think they told that story very effectively, and the world that they made to have this story take place in feels very realistic to what would probably happen if there was a zombie apocalypse. And what's cool is that the zombies in The Last of Us are quite different from zombies in other fiction. because of, the whole clicker mushrooms and stuff. The gameplay promotes exploration and scavenging and picking up every single little thing you see, which fits with these people trying to survive in this world. Combat is mostly stealth, and you have to carefully figure out how you will deal with each situation in the game, and oftentimes these gameplay moments are made even better by the current emotional events happening in the story. The Last of Us is an amazing game, and thankfully it is not underrated, unlike how infamous and, to a degree, Minecraft is. Okay, and now to reveal what my favorite game of all time is, which I'm pretty sure I have not stated on my YouTube channel before. The best game that I have ever played is Bloodborne. This might be a surprise to people, because the first time that I played Bloodborne, I gave up on it and ended up not really liking it that much. Thankfully, I gave it a second try. Bloodborne has the best gameplay out of any game I've ever played, and it also has the best story out of any game I've ever played. And it does the best job of having them work together. From most of what I've heard people talk about Bloodborne, they tend to think of the story as something that doesn't really matter much in the game, or something that does not have much depth to it or much importance to the gameplay at all. And while it is true that you can ignore most of the story while playing the game, the story is definitely there, and it definitely matters to me. When you start Bloodborne, you know essentially nothing about what's going on, both in the gameplay and the story. So you set out in Yharnam to figure out what's going on, and figure out what you must do to get out of this horrible, horrible town. There are very few things about Bloodborne's story that the game directly tells you as a fact. So most of it is left for you to figure out, which is exactly the same as what the player is doing. When it comes to gameplay, the game is infamous for being very difficult. And while it is quite difficult, I don't think that is a reason why you shouldn't play it, and I think the difficulty is actually pretty overhyped. Once you get used to the game, it's not nearly as hard as it seems it'll be when you first start it. That being said, the game still forces you to pay attention to everything, and to mess up in what you're doing as little as possible if you want to survive. While this game is difficult in that way, it is also very fair, which I think is what makes the game good. When you die, 99% of the time or more, it will be your fault and something that you could have avoided by doing something else that you knew you could have done. And that creates a massive tension for not messing up in the game and for focusing and concentrating on it constantly. This way, I think you are more immersed in the world than in many other games, and I think it also makes you more fascinated in finding out what's happening in the story, especially when there's such weird things going on in the story with all the werewolves and squid monsters. The story itself is very in-depth and intricate. I don't even understand all of it now. I don't think anyone ever will, and I think that's what makes it great. Not only that, but the themes of the story are also very interesting. There's gothic and cosmic horror, and a lot of questions come up about the concepts of humanity's greatness and religion, as well as aliens. Every time that I played a part of the game for the first time, moving forward in a level was so exciting. Not only because it meant I had just passed a challenge, but also because I knew that new secrets of the story lied ahead, and maybe, with a tiny bit of new information, I might have a little bit more of a grasp of what's going on in this incredibly interesting world. And one last thing that I want to mention about Bloodborne that I probably should have mentioned earlier when I was discussing gameplay is the weapons are fantastic. I recently started playing Demon's Souls, which is the first game of this style that From Software made, and overall, I'm somewhat disappointed in how much worse than Bloodborne it is. One of the things that makes it worse is the weapons in Demon's Souls are just boring, and there's way too many of them. Bloodborne has much less weapons, and much more interesting weapons. Also, you are only going to be able to fully upgrade 2 or 3 weapons in each playthrough of the game, as well as your stats won't work with every weapon. This adds a ton of replayability to the game, and I am currently near the end of my 4th playthrough, which is a playthrough that I'm doing just for fun. I've already platinumed the game, so there's no real reason for me to play it again except for just to experience it one more time with different weapons. And that is Bloodborne, my favorite game of all time. I highly suggest that you play every one of the games on this list if you have not already. I think they are fantastic video games, and they are the pinnacle of what video games can be. Now you know what my top 5 favorite games are, and online, the patron of mine who suggested I make this video is making a similar video on his channel, so if you want to watch that, or know what his top 5 favorite games are, go watch that. Why is my cat making weird noises and licking things or scratching something? Thank you guys for watching, and have a miserable day.